you don't get along with. But when we're older, we can really start to take more conscious control of our friends in our environment and start to say, hey, I'm only going to allow healthy people that build me up around me. And if someone's toxic, whether they're friends, family members, someone I'm dating, someone I'm in a relationship with, etc., I'm going to start setting boundaries, right? Talk about boundaries on the stream sometimes. Boundaries are your ally in keeping yourself healthy. So just keep that in mind. As you get older, it starts to become your responsibility to safeguard your social environment so you can have healthy self-esteem.
Abusive relationship in your early adult years can also chip away at your self-esteem. Self-esteem is not all or nothing. You can generally think well of yourself and your abilities, but be vulnerable in certain areas. Here's an example. Suppose your parents were loving and supportive, but you were bullied by classmates because of the way you looked or acted. You know your parents love you, but that's not enough. You also need to feel accepted by your peers. So you finish college, you start working, and you generally feel good about your abilities. But you're insecure when it comes to relationships and trusting people with your feelings. You get into a relationship with someone who uses criticism to control you. You mistake their jealous nature for love and end up spending 2 years being conditioned to believe that you're nothing without this person. You finally recognize that this person is a negative influence and you break free, but your self-esteem is in the toilet. You have a lot of rehabilitation to do to regain your confidence and undo the negative beliefs that you developed during the relationship. One might argue that a person with healthy self-esteem wouldn't be able to stay in a relationship that makes them feel bad about themselves. My answer to that is we're all flawed. No parent is able to meet all of your emotional needs.
And before we move past this point that she's making, I do want to take a second here. So we've talked a lot so far about early childhood experiences and how that can really negatively impact your self-esteem. We talked about the mechanism that does that. So to review, oftentimes if we stop and take a look at ourselves, we see there's this gap between where we're currently at and where this idealized version of ourself is at. And the larger that gap, the lower our self-esteem. But when we stop and think about it, that idealized person, that idealized image in our head that we feel like we don't measure up to often comes from messages that we got from other people, especially early in life. The one point that she makes here, which I think is a great one, is unhealthy relationships and abusive relationships can also have a very real effect on your self-esteem. So if you have ever been in an abusive relationship, then oftentimes your self-esteem can suffer as a result of that, right? So even if you have completely healthy self-esteem, if you've had like a really shitty toxic relationship, hands up if you've ever been in one of those. I know I have had a couple, probably more than my share of that in the past, especially in my earlier, more unhealed years. That can also really negatively impact your self-esteem, even if you start off with healthy self-esteem. However, people with healthy self-esteem typically are pretty good at boundaries and being assertive and speaking up for themselves, so they don't tend to be in abusive relationships. But if you're someone that was healthy, then you get, as an adult, how should I say this? If you're someone who grew up with a healthy self-esteem earlier in life, and then as an adult you get into an abusive or toxic dysfunctional relationship, quite often that can turn our self-esteem low as well, right? Really all types of trauma, but abusive relationships being one of them.
If you think of your self-esteem as a protective barrier, even the most well-adjusted person will have some holes in the barrier, holes that allow negative influences to slip through and do damage. But if you start out with a strong barrier without a lot of holes, the damage is minimal.
Always use protection, guys. Am I the only one who's sitting there thinking that? Please, ones in the chat, if anyone else thought that, please help me not feel so freaking immature. Okay, we'll watch the rest of the video.
And you're able to regroup and recover. That's part of resilience, recovering from adversity. In the relationship example, the person with low self-esteem has a lot of holes in their barrier and stays in the toxic relationship that affirms
boundaries. We talked about that earlier.
Beliefs about themselves. What keeps you stuck in these negative beliefs about yourself? The beliefs are perpetuated by rules you develop to avoid facing the negative feelings. Some examples are: I must please people to avoid criticism. It's better not to try than to get it wrong or fail. I must not speak up or express my opinion, or people will reject me.
Yep.
These are some of the signs that I mentioned earlier. These rules that you set up for yourself are also called safety behaviors. They are the things that you do that keep you from activating your negative core beliefs. Here's an example of this. If you don't offer to do something, you won't get blamed if it goes wrong. But if you break the rule of not acting and volunteer to do something for someone and it does go wrong, you get tormented with these thoughts of, see, I can't do anything right. I'm an idiot. What was I thinking?
And I think that's a great example of why often people with low self-esteem, one, can often also struggle with social anxiety, but two, also isolate themselves socially, even if you don't meet like the official diagnostic criteria for full-blown social anxiety disorder. Oftentimes those people can really struggle with just isolating themselves. So like, I don't like to go out, I don't want to be around other people. And why is that? It's because we have all these negative messages of, oh man, if I even try to meet new people or interact with people, it's not going to go well, so I'm not even going to try, because I can stay safe if I just stay away from people, stay away from opportunities to disappoint myself, right? And reaffirm all my negative beliefs about myself.
These harsh, self-critical thoughts complete the cycle of reinforcing your negative beliefs and perpetuating your low self-esteem. What can you do to improve your self-esteem? 4 things. First, identify your core beliefs.
Just saying, y'all. Just saying. We got the model on lock up in this stream, y'all. We got this. So core beliefs, core wounds. We talked about that earlier on in the stream. So she's pointing that out. Oh God, what did she say? She made a great point that I was going to mention. And then, well, not relevant, but so we'll start talking now for the rest of the stream, probably for the next 30 minutes to an hour, about how to deal with low self-esteem. What can we do to start rebuilding our self-esteem if, in fact, it was damaged by crappy experiences in childhood or negative experiences in adult, like trauma, abuse, etc.
Typical negative beliefs are: I'm not good enough, I'm not important, I'm unacceptable, I'm defective, I'm unlovable. Keep in mind, these may not be things.
And so in therapy world, oftentimes we'll refer to these negative beliefs as ants. So automatic negative thoughts, right? So if you guys have any examples of like negative beliefs or whatever that you really struggle with, feel free to add them in the chat. But ones that I can think of off the top of my head, I'm gonna screw up if I try to talk to people, so I'm not even gonna bother. I'm unlovable. I'm not gonna do a good job at work. All of these negative beliefs about ourselves. Other people aren't gonna stick around, so why even bother trying? If I missed any, feel free to add them in the chat.
Things you've ever said aloud, but your behavior, the decisions you make, the things you avoid, those are the things that tell the real story of what you believe. So your actions are based on these beliefs. Next, you want to identify your safety behaviors that...
And I like how she points out this thing. Again, a very CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy idea here. So we see this cycle in CBT all the time. Someone's got negative thoughts, which trigger some kind of feelings, which then triggers unhelpful behaviors, right? So if I believe that I'm going to screw up and make a fool of myself in every social situation, again, typical belief you might have if you struggle with social anxiety disorder, it's going to trigger negative thoughts. Or sorry, if you have those negative thoughts, it's going to trigger feelings of anxiety or, depression, fear, guilt, shame. That's then going to lead to, well, I'm just not even going to go to the Friendsgiving party. It's fine. I'm just going to skip it. I'm just going to stay home. I'm going to just watch Netflix, order pizza, and that's what I'm going to do for Thanksgiving, right? which then goes on to reinforce, oh man, I'm so lonely. I don't have anyone in my life. People don't like me. I never go to parties, and when I do go to parties, they don't go well, which then triggers more guilt, shame, etc., which then leads to more isolating, so forth. So the way to stop this, which she's kind of mentioning, oh, sorry, forgot the video that we're on, is by examining those beliefs, looking at those negative thoughts. On therapy school, we say, you got to teach people to squish the ants. You got to squash those ants. And so if I challenge my negative beliefs, my negative thoughts of like, oh, I think I'm going to be awkward if I go to this party. If I say, screw it, I'm going to go anyway. And even if I'm awkward, I've got friends there and people who care about me there. And like, even if I'm awkward and say something weird every now and then, they're going to be just happy that I showed up. And I'm sure it'll go great anyway. Then you go, and it turns out that, so when you challenge those thoughts, you feel a little bit more courageous. And then that leads to a positive action of like going to the Friendsgiving party. Some of you probably have some of those. I don't, because I'm a social pariah. But then you go to the Friendsgiving or whatever, maybe you got Thanksgiving with your actual family or friends coming up here. You go to that, and it goes well. And then this causes a positive upward spiral of like, oh, maybe I can do all right in social situations. Maybe I can put together a Thanksgiving dinner and it come out deliciously and everybody enjoys it, right? Yo, can someone just send me some pumpkin pie, please? I just need me some pumpkin pie. And then that leads to feelings of pride, joy, self-acceptance, self-worth, which then means, oh, I think I can, well, I've got another party for Thanksgiving, or they invited me to the Christmas party coming up next month. Maybe I'll go to that one. And then you go to that one, and it starts this positive spiral upwards. So, like she's kind of mentioning in the video, examining our negative beliefs and fighting back against them and taking positive action in spite of those negative thoughts can be one of the first ways of starting to combat low self-esteem and put ourselves on a good trajectory. So we'll talk about some more ways of dealing with self-esteem, but identifying those thoughts and then acting in spite of them, but also trying to address the thoughts and disprove your own thoughts can be a great way of dealing with low self-esteem.
Help you avoid facing these beliefs. Go back to the things that I mentioned earlier, like people pleasing, being perfectionistic, not speaking up, not having any ambition. The third step is to face your fears by breaking your rules or dropping the safety behaviors.
Yeah. Yep.
This gives you
exactly
a chance
what we just talked
to
about.
Test your negative predictions. If you avoid expressing your opinion because you predict that the person will reject you, test that out by giving your opposing view and see what happens. You may be surprised to see that you're not rejected, but instead you spark a spirited conversation. So
we have to start to build that evidence, that real world evidence that contradicts our beliefs. I'm going to do a little bit of a vulnerable share with this. When I was younger, I had all of these negative self-beliefs about like, I'm unlovable, blah, 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 blah. And in the dating world, that really affected me. So I didn't even start dating until I was in my early 20s, y'all. I got started hell late in the dating game. But, not to brag, but, I've done pretty well for myself. I've dated some really amazing people and had a bunch of really cool relationships since then. And it was one of those things of I had to act my way into right thinking. I had to start to build real world experiences where, I talked to someone that I was attracted to and that went well. And we're like, oh, I guess I'm more attractive than I thought. I guess I have qualities about me that other people can, admire and enjoy. And that started to counteract those negative thoughts that I had. So often we have to act our way into right thinking.
That would otherwise have been one-sided. People may find you more interesting. But if someone disagrees with you, a disagreement isn't a rejection. By taking this risk of speaking up, you get to learn that you can indeed handle someone disagreeing with you. Then the fourth step is to replace your...
Typically, I just handle them by beating them up. Not the healthiest way. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's a great point by her, for sure.
Self-criticism with self-compassion. Let's say with the previous example of speaking up and giving an opposing opinion, that the person that you're talking to doesn't like your opinion and argues back. Instead of being harsh with yourself for starting an argument...
Yo, Ito, what's going on? How goes it? Also, what? Oh my God, what time is it for you over there? What did you say the other day? You're like 7 hours ahead of me. Is it like 5 a.m. for you over there? We're talking about self-esteem. Also, I would say happy Thanksgiving, but I'm guessing you guys don't celebrate over there. 3:43. Oh my God. Well, I mean, I was gonna do Overwatch in a little bit if you don't pass out dead before then. Would definitely be down to try some European servers and see if that goes well. So you're definitely more than welcome to join if you're interested. But yeah, welcome in. We're talking about self-esteem today. So I kind of do individual mental health topics on Tuesdays a lot, and then on Fridays I also do stuff about like relationship, like more relationship focused stuff. So welcome in. We're talking about how to deal with low self-esteem. You got none? Got none what? Oh, self-esteem. Oh, you missed our poll. I was like, if you struggle with self-esteem, answer in the poll. Hold on. Let's see. What were our poll results here? Official poll results. We had people answer all over the board. So, okay. Well, good. For those of you guys answered you struggle with your self-esteem, then you're just in time because we're talking about what to do about it. So one thing that we talked about is building up real-world evidence that contradicts the negative beliefs, right? And the other thing we mentioned was, in therapy world, we call it squashing the ants. So your automatic negative thoughts about yourself, you got to challenge those. So if you're like, Ida, you're never going to get off of plat, you got to say, no, I'm amazing at Overwatch and I can carry and I'm going to get all the way up to diamond and masters and grandmaster and radiant. Is that? No, that's not Overwatch. That's Valorant, which is also a game you should play.
Give yourself praise for asserting your opinion. You're not responsible for other people's behavior. If they can't handle an opposing viewpoint, it's a negative reflection on them and not you. You might say,
but that just means that I'm not good with people if I make them mad all the time.
No one is good with someone who lashes out when someone disagrees with them. No one enjoys that. So recognizing...
Well, and again, that goes back to the thing that we were talking about earlier, that if you have a lot of toxic people in your life, they can really drag down your self-esteem. So, but I do like the point that she makes here. So I want to back up a little bit because we haven't talked about this yet. That just means I'm not good with people if I make them mad all the time. We haven't talked about what if you're just actually genuinely neurodivergent, because that can be a thing.